Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Subnet Show. I'm your host, Gabriel Cardona, and I am joined as always by the man with the most cats in crypto. But most importantly, we're glad to see him nice and healthy. Connor Daly, what's up, man? I've heard you had a crazy week.
Oh man, yeah, it was crazy. I made an apple pie and it caught on fire and didn't. I put it out. I got it out before the fire department came, but house got a little smoky. Then I had some after effects of all of the smoke inhalation, which led to just some fun and exciting doctor's visits where they told me that I had some problem with my heart, and it turned out the problem was that I was fit and that my heartbeat was just below 60 beats per minute. But that's just a normal thing for me because I run a lot. But for other people, that might mean they're dying.
Got
So
it.
yeah, ups and downs this week, but I'm back and I'm here to talk.
Got it.
True roller coaster.
Yeah, no doubt. That was a roller coaster. I was there with you the whole time, man. That was intense. We're glad. Good to hear you're okay, dude. And yes, so we got a cool guest with us this week. I remember, I think I was with you, Connor. I feel like I could be misremembering this, but I feel like we had taken an Uber down to the Avalanche house. And as we were walking up, we saw like this really nice Avalanche jersey with CederNet blazed across the back of it. I could be misremembering that we were together, but I feel like we did just jump out of the Uber. I was with somebody. We jumped out of the Uber, and I'm like, well, I guess I clearly know who that is at a distance. So we have a really cool Avalanche community member that we met in Lisbon in person, YouTube personality, and just all around Blockstar, CederNet, with us today. What's up, CederNet?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm very good, and I remember that moment as well. It was like the start of a great day.
And when you say Avalanche jersey, literally the Avalanche hockey team, I forget where they're from, Carolina, right?
Colorado, I think. I have it here.
Colorado Avalanche, man. Yeah, literally the NHL jersey, custom jersey with the CederNet name. It's awesome.
It is a nice shirt.
So yeah, the official Avalanche jersey.
Like literally, that was pretty cool. So yeah, you flew into Lisbon. You told me you were FOMOing out. That's pretty impressive. That's how I feel about Istanbul, right? When you're like, are you going to go? I'm like, at this point, it's looking like no, but don't count me out yet because the FOMO might get me yet. But that's what you said. You FOMOed out and showed up, right?
Yeah, I FOMOed in, luckily. But yeah, and I think it was a great decision. First of all, it was tons of fun. Met so many cool people, had so many cool conversations. And I've also seen online, the opposite, the people who felt the FOMO but didn't make the decision, and they're regretting it right now. I'm pretty sure.
Did you check out any other events? I was incredibly Avalanche centric, as you might imagine. I didn't go to anything else. But obviously there was other stuff happening. Did you check anything else out?
No, honestly, I flew in Friday evening and I arrived at my hotel past midnight. Then I was there Saturday morning, quite early, had lunch with the Crocodile team, and then basically spent the entire rest of the day at the Avalanche house until I got a bit tired, and I was like, you know what, it's good. It was like 10 or so, I think.
So you were there for the
yeah. So how did you discover Avalanche? And then what's your Avalanche journey been? So starting out, hearing about the protocol somehow, jumping into the social media side. I know you mostly from Twitter. I know you make videos as well. Tell us what it is you do and kind of how that brought you to Avalanche House.
Sure. So the first time I ever heard about Avalanche is I've been in crypto since 2017, end of 2017. And at some point I started following Professor Gun. Just always good opinions. It seems like that guy is the chess grandmaster who is always 3 steps ahead. He's he says no, this doesn't work because of this, and 3 months later thing fails. So you're like, oh yeah. This guy knows what he's doing. And at some point he started tweeting Ava Solstice. And I was like, okay, what's this Ava thing and where do we get it? So yeah, basically just kept my eye on it, and saw at some point the ticker changed to AVAX. Saw the initial token sale, the public sale coming up. Got in luckily. It was one of my first times actually using Ethereum. I hadn't really been using Ethereum. Got me a heart attack because my first 2 or 3 transactions failed because there was just gas spike at the time of the sale, which I was not used to at all. Got in luckily. I think that's been very good for me. And then I think especially around the Pangolin launch when the Ethereum Avalanche Ethereum bridge came, and everybody wanted to ape into Pangolin, you know, explore the new ecosystem.
Mhm.
A lot of people I saw a lot of people struggle with the bridge, like transaction failed, or what do I do? Like anything, how do I cross from exchange to C chain, all that stuff. And especially people struggling with the bridge, was a common question. I was like, well, now that, you know, a bunch of funds have moved over, like there's a bunch of Ether, there's a bunch of Chainlink there, there's a bunch of sushi there, you don't actually have to use the bridge. Like if you're, you know, transferring an amount, say lower than 1,000, probably even a bit more, like the gas fees of Ethereum don't make sense. Just take whatever you have, send it to Binance, and just assuming you're okay using Binance. Sell for AVEX, send AVEX to Exchange and to C chain, and then, you know, buy whatever you wanted to transfer at Pangolin. It's probably cheaper.
Yeah.
So that's the very first video I made, and I made a video because I had a YouTube channel around more like gaming related, like a couple of years ago, and I figured I can either write the same answer in Telegram every 10 minutes, or I make a video and maybe, you know, Google at some point picks it up. Like, you know, when people Google how to use the Avalanche Ethereum bridge, that video shows off like, oh no, you don't have to.
Got
That
it.
video was very well received. I know Tyler, Sherpa, and previously Ava Labs. He was one of the very first commenters. I think Gabriel, you responded on Twitter quite early as well, and that really just gave me a lot of energy to continue. And you know, next 2 videos are Pangolin, then Yeti Swap, at some point Snowball Finance, and yeah, from there onward. And then how I got to Avalanche House, yes, just from that point onward, there've been more and more parts in the community, and talked to a lot of people also like behind the scenes, and I just really wanted to be there.
And what is your, yeah, I see, I'm looking at your channel now. So it looks like that was 8 months ago. It looks like you've got a couple thousand subscribers, which is pretty good, especially when you consider, you know, at the size of Avalanche and everything, and you're relatively technical. I guess there's a couple questions. How technical is your background? Are you a software engineer? Are you a student? Obviously, I don't expect you to reveal anything about your personal life. You don't want to or anything, but like, what do you do? I guess maybe it would be the lame way of asking that. And then number 2, sort of like, how do you pick your content? How do you interface with the teams? How do you reach out to them? Those kind of things.
Yeah. So my background is business administration, management of innovation is my master. Then I've worked briefly in a hardware company, PCs and servers, you know, basically the whole thing. So I have a little bit of knowledge of like how IT infrastructure works. Then I moved to a consulting company, did more sales first because I was in a sales enablement function, mostly teaching other people like how to use certain products, how to sell certain products, specifically around configuration. But notice that like, if you don't have your data right, your CRM right, like it's a pain. So I moved to that consulting company, like did more CRM stuff. So there I learned like basically a lot about data and how data moves in databases. I left that job at the end of last year, started a new job in marketing this year. So I wouldn't say I'm technical. Like if it comes to code, like I can hardly read it to the extent that it uses normal words. I can read it like, you know, if it uses an object or an asset, like, and it has a normal name, I can probably understand what it asset is, but that's about it.
Sure.
But I understand like reading and writing data, and that's I think one part of blockchain. That's you know, it's one of the parts. And I try to, but when I try to make a video, I just try to tell people what they need to do, and maybe give a little bit of a background. I think it's interesting, but not do like a very technical deep dive. The goal is to have, you know, your mom and dad to be able to watch the video and copy it essentially. Then the question about how I select my the topics, it's been evolving. It's not black and white. I think when I started the channel, there was a problem that needed a video, or that the video would help solve. Then because that got such, you know, good response, and it's kind of the first in, or at least one of the first in that area, it became more daily newsy, right? This app now is an airdrop, this happens here, this is a new function. Which, I mean, it was taxing also because I didn't want to like have like show like any preference. Like if a new NFT thing came up, I was like, well, okay, I'll make the video. I'll show people how to buy it at first. Luckily, I think at some point, you know, you got the guys like Afexholics coming on who did more of the daily news stuff. I think also people got a bit more used to it, so I didn't need to show them like of every NFT purchase, like how to click buy and then do the match transaction. So that saved me a little bit of AFEX as well. Could focus more on stuff that's, you know, I thought was really interesting, really big, bigger updates, bigger apps. Did more of an intro 2 series, which is still going on. It's quite a success. It's quite a success. But at some point, especially around March, it became impossible to keep up with all the new apps launching.
Yeah.
So I did like
That's
an
true.
ecosystem overview. I did, I think, 3 or 4 of those. But I didn't enjoy doing those so much, just because I would do like 50 apps in like 10 minutes and just go like, this is one sentence each. And it's just like, oh, this is not incredibly interesting for me. It takes a lot of time to research, and then I give them like 1 sentence. And then a lot of apps also that I think didn't always add super much value, I was like, well, I'll include them here. So where we have arrived now is I'm more selective. Also because I need to defend my own time a little bit. So I do videos, like my DMs are open at the moment again. Projects can like DM me, and if they have a topic or an app that's interesting, I'm happy to consider it. I try to not do so much NFT projects at the moment, because especially if they're just 10,000 something, it's not a very interesting topic to talk about. People don't learn much from that. Same thing for DEXs. DEXs aren't typically the most interesting, because we've seen a couple DEXs. Most people figure out how they work. Trader Joe a couple months back was the exception, because Trader Joe really came in with like a deck first of all, and like, you just want to have your opinion. This is what we're going to do different, and this is how we're going to challenge Pangolin.
So one question I have here is, how do you kind of balance that the responsibility to be rigorous and like really evaluate what these projects are doing, with kind of the marketing aspect of like, how do I make sure that I'm like helping give these projects visibility, help teach people how to use it, but also at the same time be critical, not just give free marketing to scams and rug pulls and stuff like that. How do you approach that, and how do you balance that?
So that's one of the main challenges. I'm definitely biased towards projects that have spent a longer time in the ecosystem. I think my 2 latest videos are with Yak and Penguin, kind of collaborative. And I'm very comfortable interacting with them, and if they say, hey, is this interesting, I'm very comfortable, because I've spoken to the teams, I know them. A new app, especially if I don't know who's building it, I'm a little bit more cautious. Not like, it's not a red flag immediately, of course, but I'm just a bit more cautious. Then also I want to know, like, what is actually the value proposition, like what problem really are you solving, and like, how do your users benefit if they use it? So I think what we see, especially, once things are successful, is that there will be copycats. There will be people chasing the same fortune, the same thing as with Ethereum or Bitcoin, like do the same thing, but change a couple points in it, a couple things, change a couple parameters, and we call it a success. And that's, I think, less interesting as well.
Which it seems like what's getting ready to happen with the Ohm clones, right?
Yeah, so I think the Ohm clones at the moment are in the hottest new thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that all of them are bad per se, but it is, it's something that you need to keep in mind. Like, okay, currently, the money goes after Ohm clones. So,
So now let's say I'm a new project and I am really thirsting for that CederNet video. What are the kind of what are the steps that I should take to present myself, as reputably as possible to you? Like, what are the things that you look for, that if it's, do you look at this as kind of a collaboration with them? Are you doing this for them? Is this a service someone can buy from you? So how do you approach that kind of relationship, and what should the project bring to make this happen? So
officially, if you'll like write my channel, like say, hey, can we sponsor something? The answer is generally no. Which may surprise people who've watched my latest videos, because it does have sponsored flag up. I'm willing to talk about it in a moment as well. But typically, don't write me and ask me if I want to do something like marketing. It's not really that. You want to hear what you have that's interesting, and why people may need to know more about it in order to use it. So what I prefer people to send is, documentation, explain like what is their value proposition. Like, the more of that information I have, the better. Doesn't necessarily mean I want to have received all the white papers in my inbox, because I also don't completely have time to read every single one of them. What also really helps is if you've got, something like Avalanche. I know you had Mark last week. if Avalanche is backing you or if Avatar is backing you, it's kind of reputable organizations, that helps, because then I kind of know someone else has done at least a share of due diligence, and I can, be a little bit more trustful of it. But there isn't like a black and white setup for it. Like I'm not really running a super efficient business to that extent. Like it's a bit gut feeling. It's a little bit getting to know you as well. Like the longer, you just talk to me, say, hey, CederNet, this. Like this is what we're doing. Just keep people updated. Maybe, preferably, build a community before you launch your project as well. All that kind of stuff helps.
So now I want to kind of turn this around. I don't want to give you too much competition, but do you think that starting a YouTube channel is a good way to make connections in the ecosystem?
I think so. Especially, N is one for me, but for me, it's helped a lot. Like, especially being one of the first, I got a lot of projects reaching out to me. I've been, added to chat groups where I can talk to people. I've been able to DM people and ask special questions as well. Like maybe it's a little bit easier for me to read. Of course, crypto is quite centralized. You can most of the time find devs in Discord, but it is a good way to get to know people for sure.
And what does your workflow look like? How much time do you actually invest in these things? And then what does your actual workflow look like? What apps do you use to pull together that kind of stuff?
It really depends. So right now I'm just like work is a little bit busier, so I'm defending my time a bit more, so I'm not working on it every evening for sure. But what I do try to do is keep up with Twitter, be at least have an idea of like most of the apps that launch, especially the bigger ones. Like what is it they do? Do I find it interesting? Should I talk about it? And then like when it comes to a video, especially recently, it's been very often people that do get in touch with me, try to explain what they're doing, asking for a video. Also because I started liking to do the interview, kind of more interview videos as well, especially when an app hasn't launched the project yet, the product, you cannot really click through it. And I want to prefer them to, talking about their vision and what their plans are. So when it comes to workflow, it's normally a preparation, getting to know them, setting some time, setting some, expectations of what, is available and what's not possible, kind of. And then actually doing the recording, which depending on what kind of videos can take, anywhere from like 1 to a couple hours, I'd say. And then editing. I think editing is underestimated how much time it takes, just because, especially with like the intro to videos, which need to be kind of snappy and to the point and correct. You kind of need to listen to every word you say a couple times just to get it out. So like every editing is multiple times like the video length for sure, at least. And that doesn't even count all the stuff that's edited out.
Seems like a massive time sink to do good editing for sure.
That's why this is actually my second podcast that I've done in my life. And the first one was a failed attempt, partly because it was too edited and it just was too much work for what myself and my former co-host were willing to put in. And that's why this show is as shitty as it is.
Yeah, because you're not, I mean,
we don't try at all.
I completely sympathize. That's why I like doing interviews as well. There's, as long as nobody does anything particularly stupid or says something they're not supposed to say, like you can get away with more and thinking.
What do you actually use to edit? What software?
Sony Vegas I use. I just upgraded, I think last week, to Sony Vegas 19. I was like 5 versions behind. But now 19 crashes all the time. So maybe I'll go back to 14. I don't know. And then I use OBS.
Interesting. You're not on the Adobe stack.
I'm not. I'm not. I've not really tried it, but I've wanted to buy like Photoshop, and then like you have to do this stupid subscription thing, and I just hate it. So and I started with Sony. I started with Sony Vegas like when I was 12 or 13 or so, and I wanted to make like MapleStory animations, and then got like a bootleg version of Sony Vegas. And
MapleStory, I haven't heard that in a while.
Okay, so you have a good overview, like a micro and a macro understanding of the Avalanche ecosystem. You definitely are an OG and you've been around forever. You run a validator, which is super respected. Like if that's not skin in the game, I'm not sure what is. So props there. which we have over 1,100 now. It's crazy to think that's the case. But so we've had explosive, crazy growth. Let's say 400 dApps in the last 14 months or so. I guess I wonder, what is your general impression? Is there anything that jumps out of your mind that is super interesting right now? Is there anything that we're doing that's new? Is there anything that's unique? Like, where do you think we're going to be in a year? What do you think of subnets? What do you think is the most exciting things happening in Avalanche? I just want to get a sense of where you think we're at.
I mean, I don't think you'll speak to many people in the Avalanche ecosystem who are not terribly excited for subnets, just because they open up so many things that like general chain does not allow for. But more to like maybe more tangible for people. I'm not honestly very deep in Ethereum, so I'm not the best person to compare anything with Ethereum or even other ecosystems. I think ideally we'd all know everything that's going on every chain, but realistically we need to focus our attention and pick our battles essentially. So it is Avalanche that I know best. But what I've been seeing is I've seen a lot of cool apps starting to come onto Avalanche, more often also picking it as their preferred chain, even if they offer something that's not currently on Ethereum. And I think we're going to see more and more of that. And some of those are already public. I also speak to some projects in the back, which maybe aren't completely out in the open there and have as much traction as maybe they deserve. I think one very cool thing was, but actually at the Avalanche house we had the Arrow guy speaking about the options. And just like an hour later I was speaking to this guy. I was like, I'm waiting for someone to introduce options. I was like, well, I got news for you. Need to talk to those guys. And then he said, well, I've been waiting for people to figure that out on Ethereum. It's like, well, no, this is where all the cool stuff is happening. So I have very good hopes.
I would say that was one of my favorite parts of Avalanche House in Lisbon, was just connecting people. And they're just talking about, well, I'm just like trying to figure out how to like get listed on Pangolin or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, Leo from Pangolin is right there. And then Ken is right there. And then just like, oh, okay. Well, we're trying to get on Aave. Like, okay, well, Stanny is coming by in a couple hours, so you should like talk to him while he's here. And you could totally like, it was just so many industry connections. Was one of the reasons that I thought Lisbon was just an incredibly high ROI event for me, and I think for a lot of other people, is just Avalanche is still very small right now. I mean, we say that there's so much growth going on and that it's hard to keep up with, but it's definitely a small world kind of thing. There's only probably a few hundred projects right now, and as far as which projects are like really successful, there's not actually that many, and it's still in a stage where you can basically, if you have a goal to meet someone or be a part of some project, you can probably achieve that goal if you're willing to work at it. And going to a conference, exactly. Nobody's the number of gatekeepers right now is so small and so so non-existent that it's so easy to make these connections. And eventually it'll be harder on Ethereum. I think it's harder right now, but
I was just now looking at good old Kevin, one of the co-founder of Ava Labs' Twitter feed, and he posted on the November 9th, one of the biggest crypto events is currently under planning for next year. Going to be wild, stay tuned. And I know it's still mostly on the DL, but since he posted that, it is true. There's like we learned a lot in Lisbon. So just to kind of build on what Connor is saying, like this is a great opportunity. And there's some big events coming up in the early part of next year. Ava Labs is getting ready to step up its sort of social outreach based on what we picked up in Lisbon. And it'll be a good opportunity to just kind of meet in person and cement these, digital relationships.
I'm looking forward to it. And for everyone at home, definitely recommend you show up for this one if you miss Lisbon.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't know anything about it for the record, but
I think also just we're generally interested in having like a global presence as well. So don't it's easy to be like, oh, it's Lisbon, I'm in Asia or in the United States, so it's harder to attend these things internationally, especially with COVID and everything else. So we are trying to, I think, have a presence around the world at a lot of different events. As we mentioned, we've announced we have something in Istanbul coming up for Turkey, and I think there will, as the world just opens back up more, we're going to see more and more events distributed throughout the globe. So if you can't make one event, it's never going to be the end of the world. But if you can make any of these, I mean, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Completely
Awesome.
agree.
Cool. Yes. So I'm trying to see what else. Like, are there any of your interviews that really stand out in your mind, or anything in particular on the entire Avalanche journey that kind of jumps out? Like, to me, the entire journey has been amazing. It's amazing to see the success we've seen so soon. I guess I was wondering your impression of price is just one metric, and to me, having been in crypto for so long, it really is the least interesting metric, but it's the metric everybody hangs on to because it's money, and money's an easy way to keep score. But I wonder how much of the price we see right now in Avalanche is fulfilled potential and how much of it is unfulfilled potential. And then just kind of go back to the other question, is there anything, any of your interviews that stand out in your mind, or any time at all in the entire journey that jumps out at you?
Yeah, so just like to quickly agree on the price. It's like crypto is speculative. We can't deny that. A lot of money in crypto is speculation. A lot of people see people make easy money, and it is, life-changing money for some at least.
Sure.
And it attracts people. And our goal, I think, what we should be working on is making them stay. Be like, okay, you can make some money, but try and also understand what we're doing here, and try to see how this is not just a Ponzi scheme you need to get out of at some point, but this is a paradigm shifting thing potentially for how we interact with things in the world. And then to come back to the other side of that question, I think this journey has been special from the start. I mentioned it, I think, earlier, Tyler being one of the first people to reply to leave a comment on one of my videos. It was very important to me because I put that video out. I put up a channel, put that video out. It wasn't particularly high quality. It was just like, okay, I'll just speak the words about what you need to do, and click through the screen a little bit while I'm doing that. So to get that feedback, that was very motivating for me. And then also, like I said, Gabriel, your tweet about it. And that's just grown, I remember around the time PandaSwap, which isn't really around anymore. When that went live, I got a retweet by, I think, both Kevin and Gun.
Which one was it?
PandaSwap. I don't think it's around at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, Bamboo, PandaSwap.
I don't remember that one. Okay.
Had a little
Too
issue.
many.
Yeah.
Yeah, too many dexes. But yeah, and then from that point on, I think just early on as well, being followed by Fareed and Omer and those guys, because the community was so small, right? It was still easy to get to know people, and so welcoming and being a part of it. That transitioning into getting slightly bigger, I think around April and March, and people getting a little bit dex tired. People were like, "Oh, another dex. When are we gonna see more stuff?" And I remember that was the first fireside chat I did with Omer, which is chatted for 40 minutes or so on Zoom, and that was recorded and uploaded. And that was, first of all, very fun to do. I think Omer and I talked for 2 hours before that, at a practice session, just chatting about stuff. But it was also when Trader Joe left a comment on it, we're gonna do things differently, and I was like, okay.
Wow, really? That's funny. That was the video?
That was the video the tweet, actually, they left a comment on there. So that was from that moment on, I was like, okay, show me what you've got. And then we did the Sherpa thing with Tyler. So that was the first time for me talking to Tyler, who had that impact at the start, which was good. Yeah. Going into getting shown the deck by CryptoFish and Murlocs, and they asked me, what can we do for exposure? And I was like, well, Penguin did a really good job. Penguin did really build a community. They had an art competition. They had to beef with PandaSwap as well, and it got people engaged. And they were like, oh, so we should start a beef. And I was like, I think that's where the Penguin rivalry was formed. Okay. And for me, it's been it's not my project, Trader Joe, but I've been really proud of how much they've grown, and seeing that team with the vision and executing. Crazy, and being successful. Yeah. Going into Avalanche Rush, where I think it's very validating to see people who have been using Ethereum and specifically not Avalanche before being like, wow, this is really amazing.
Yeah.
That's validating and you know, super excited for like things to come. But I think right now we're at the point where, you know, apps that's built natively on Avalanche when it's, you know, wasn't as big as it is now, and you know don't know how much bigger we're going to get. But apps that built on it from the start with like, you know, the belief in the vision, and seeing them be successful right now is also really cool for me, because I've been speaking to those guys. Sorry,
I just wanted to jump off what you said, and I know we're kind of saying the same thing over and over right now, but I think that Avalanche, yeah, just the way where the community is at right now, there is just, people are starving for Avalanche content. And for people interested in producing it, I think it's just an absolutely fantastic time. And there's so many opportunities for people to jump in on YouTube, on Twitter. I do a lot of writing on Twitter, and I try to stay mostly ecosystem agnostic, because I don't, I want to be able to reach people outside of the Avalanche community, and I don't want to just be known as a maxi. But I have to say, when I write about Avalanche specific topics, those tweets perform usually far better than everything else. I was joking with Mark last week that the thread that I wrote about Avalanche's token sale was my best Twitter thread of all time, performance wise. And last week I actually wrote another thread on subnets, which if you're interested in Subnet show and subnets in particular, you should definitely check out. But you might have already seen it because I did twice as well as my previous all-time high. So that was, I did like 500,000 impressions in like a day or two. So that was really, I mean, it just shows me that there's so much desire from the community for this kind of content. And so if you're willing to put the work in, if you're thinking about getting started, I would highly encourage you, whatever form works for you. I mean, there still needs to be more Medium articles. There still needs to be more YouTube content. Yeah. I don't know of any Instagram or TikTok influencers on Avalanche right now, except maybe like, I don't know, Don Wonton had his TikTok.
He probably does. Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, the opportunity is there. It's a very undersaturated market. So, you know, if you like CederNet, I know I don't want to dethrone you as the #1 Avalanche video maker.
I will not be offended. Please take some off my work.
There's so much opportunity right now. But now I kind of want to change, ask a reverse question that Gabriel asked. I think Gabriel asked what you're excited about, what's going really well. I kind of want to know what's going poorly. What is Avalanche failing to do right now? And what could Ava Labs be doing better? What could the community be better? What gaps do you see that people need to fill, whether us or just the community or whatever?
Right. So my biggest frustration, like from the past couple of months, especially since the start of Rush, kind of ties into what we just said, the need for more content creators. Especially since the launch of Rush, my inbox has just been flooded with projects that have come and gone. That's, not all of them made it, and I think some of them haven't made it because they just weren't, particularly innovative or interesting. But tying into whatever the latest trend was. And I try to be ethical. I briefly referred to it earlier. Like, I don't do promotions. When I do like sponsorship, it's more like, when a sponsor flag is up, like I always mention it as well, but like what exactly the deal is, or maybe not exactly, but what approximately the deal is. It's like
that's a hard thing to do, because I have people DMing me as well constantly saying like, hey, can you promote my project? I'm doing this NFT drop or whatever. And I usually either don't answer or have to say no. I don't do promotions. I have been tricked though in the past. People have made me some custom NFTs of me before, so I'm just like, you put in a lot of work to that. I'll give you the retweet there.
I mean, it's not, especially when you put in work and like, you're not a monolith, you're not a statue. Like, you can care about stuff without, recommending, and that's a difficulty, and I feel for Sad Start, because it's even more like he cannot tweet about anything without people getting involved and either angry or very happy. And
also when you write or make a video about something, that means you didn't make a video about everything else,
right? So that was what I wanted to avoid at the start, which now I sadly cannot, and maybe it's better that I do apply a little bit of selection. But yeah, so like my criteria is like, do I or do I expect to receive anything of value in relation to this video? So like the Heroes of NFT flag has, for example, that sponsorship up because it wasn't a sponsored video, but we did do like a card opening and they did reimburse me for that. So yes, technically I, received something from value. So flag up. Just try to be open about that. When it comes to like Penguin and Yak, I know them a little bit better and they still ask, can I sponsor video? Answer is still no, but like if you're willing to make a donation to the channel, like I'm open to that, irrespective of whether you get the video or not in a way. But it's undeniable that it is tied to the video, into a certain extent at least. But I don't, it's not like you have to say like, oh, I will donate this much and then either you get the video, yes or no. Like that's not the thing. But it's a difficult conversation because to what extent is that ethical? I don't give financial advice, at least I don't think I do. But I also see people, because I get a lot of those offers, I see people promoting, like basically tweeting, especially on Twitter, the exact same thing that I was asked to promote without like any disclaimer like, hey, I'm getting paid to promote this. And I don't have hard evidence because I can look into people's DMs, but I do feel like that is something that happens, and it's I would prefer if that was more open. Like, I don't think you have to be ashamed for taking like promoted deals, presuming you're ethical about it. And also, I think we've seen accounts more, especially since Rush coming up, that are specifically meant to do that. Like accounts that post like news sites that basically from like day one DM people, hey, can we promote your project? Without ever disclosing that. And it's something that frustrates me personally. It's not something that's easy for any one person to do something about. It's something for the community to see through. But yeah, I think crypto is a minefield with bad projects and people shilling their own bags and profiting, finding ways to profit off people. And yeah, that's one thing we're seeing more of now that we're more successful as well.
I think that's one of the hardest parts about crypto is getting objective information. Legitimacy is definitely is the scarcest resource in crypto. And it's just hard because if you go to these YouTube channels, the people who know crypto the best are the people who have the most money invested in it. There aren't these ethical observers who are no coiners who have no financial interest in these things whatsoever. And so even if you think that these people are trying to be honest, there's always like the subconscious bias of that, you can't even detect yourself of, oh, I am invested in this, so I want this to do well. It's very hard to separate that from your work. And so I think that's one of the reasons people find it so hard to find these objective sources or just trust all these influencers, because especially there are people who are not ethical, who buy shit coins and then talk about them on their YouTube channel to their 1 million followers, and then their followers go and buy them, pump the price, and then they dump on their followers, or they pump their own bag. So it's
I have, sorry to cut you off. Now that I have or not now, but my son is 12, he's about to be 13. And so I'm just a bit more dialed into like the teenage influencer scene. And there is quite a lot of sort of NFT or token pump this, that, like, there's no question about it that crypto is starting to be used in sort of YouTube influencer, teenage influencer type scams. And, it's like one of those things you wrap your mind around because you're helping to build the underlying technology. So how long is it before I see one of these crypto YouTube influencers launch some NFT project on Avalanche? Can't be too much longer. You know what I'm saying? Why are they not doing it already? You got to wonder, right? Like, are they really still using Ethereum? Why? So yeah, that's pretty interesting. So I wondered, we talked about like, what can we do better? What do you see like as our biggest hurdle right now? Or our biggest sort of like, what would you guard against right now?
What would I guard against?
Because my concern is I think we're going to be hit from like some social attack. Our technology is fucking solid, man. Avalanche is one of the best tech stacks I've ever worked with. But I've been in crypto a long time, and I've seen a lot of tribes get hit by the social attack. And so that's what I'm more wary of. Now I feel like we're a third generation technology, and there's people who just have a lot more, as a crypto tribe, we have a lot more of immunity to that kind of thing. And we have some strong antibodies in our tribe of people like Goon and Kevin and just some absolute next level experts who can suss that bullshit out a mile away. I've seen Goon go to battle many times on social media defending defending the right way of crypto goodness. And so I know it's like, we've got antibodies against it, but that's my concern, is a social attack. But in your opinion, sort of like, what's our biggest hurdle? What are we facing?
I think if you frame it as a hurdle, I think one thing that we do need to overcome is just get more people to understand that Avalanche is not just Ethereum, or specifically, I think most people know Avalanche specifically as a seed chain. Avalanche is not just an Ethereum copy with fewer delegators or less security, or the blockchain trilemma. It is truly different because the underlying consensus layer is new, better, improvement. Like the different paradigm almost. And making, like you said, almost everyone in crypto has a vested interest in certain projects doing well. And people always, what I alluded to earlier, people do not have the energy or the mental capacity to know everything about everything all the time. So they follow influencers, they take shortcuts, mental shortcuts, they make assumptions. And that's not necessarily bad, that's something we all do. And as long as, hopefully everything at some point resolves itself. But I think there is a hurdle where you want to explain how Avalanche is different without seeming antagonistic to something else. So very often something is framed Avalanche versus this. And as soon as you frame it as, versus, it's always antagonistic. But if you don't frame it as versus, you don't really get the other side involved in a way. And I think, it's difficult to, because people have all kinds of assumptions. They've heard someone tweeted something sometime and like Avalanche is VC land, whatever. And they will repeat that. And it's hard to like argue against something if you do not have like, the same base layer of facts, and not completely, you're arguing against people who are not completely open to new ideas very often because they have a vested interest in a different thing. They like, confirmation bias, and honestly, so do I. I like when Zach tweets something like very positive about Avalanche. I'm like, yes, you are completely right. Yeah. And this maybe not. It's an Avalanche specific problem because I think we just need people to understand more than maybe other chains need to understand. Some chains have a much simpler value proposition in a way. But it is a crypto-wide issue. I think that a lot of chains are, a lot of projects are struggling with.
Are there any what primitives are we missing that we still need to add to our ecosystem? Either DeFi primitives or it's things like the verifiable random function, which for some reason I don't understand is still not live on Chainlink, but that seems like we're a big missing primitive, right? What other primitives are we missing?
Absolutely, the verifiable random function. I think there's been apps that will have waited almost a year to implement that by the time it finally goes live. I am fully convinced that like the coolest things that are gonna launch on blockchain are things that I have not yet thought about. I'm pretty sure there's genius minds out there who are building like absolutely crazy stuff that none of us can imagine that will change like entire industries maybe. Putting things a bit more short term within like more tangible, I think what would be good is getting more things tokenized. I think that's something where John Woo talks about a lot. We're seeing real estate with Retalk. I think there is some. I think Retalk, it may not be the most decentralized solution because they're not a DAO. It's kind of an intermediary in a way, to my understanding, not financial advice. We're seeing real estate. I think I've seen an infrastructure project. We're seeing Arrow, and I think a couple of others wanting to do options. For myself, and I think for a decent amount of retail, decentralized finance, like it only goes so far being useful. I don't think all retail should be messing with options, futures, and all that stuff. I don't think it's necessarily good for everyone. If it's your thing, good for you. But I think a lot of people just find, in all honesty, would be better off hodling, from a financial perspective.
Sure.
So what I really want to see, what I think is a big catalyst, is more enterprise adoption. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's not, I don't think you would call it a primitive, but subnets are like the big thing for that. So that's, I think, one of the, like I mentioned it earlier, why I'm so incredibly excited for that. I want to see more use case specific blockchains that are scalable and, are, have some longevity to it.
Yeah, subnets have been a topic of conversation between a lot of different people lately in my workflow, and they're on everybody's mind right now, internal and external. So there's no question about it. Subnets are a big paradigm. Application-specific blockchains, privacy blockchains, Internet of Things blockchains. Another thing that I keep talking about is gaming and blockchain integration. And I wonder, how will regulation work around gaming and blockchain? Is that the thing that's holding it up? Have there been a bunch of teams that have already tried it and they get tripped up in the regulation, or how will that work? Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I do not know of anything. I mean, that's your car if you want to.
Yeah. I don't think it's.
It's not regulation. I think what's hard is actually just designing mechanisms that are efficient for use on the blockchain, and having a chain that, because for games, if you're doing everything like turn by turn or something like that, you need to be pushing transactions very frequently.
Sure.
And if those transactions are not fast or they're not cheap, then it's not worthwhile to do. And so that's why you've seen anything of magnitude like Axie actually needs its own sidechain, because it can't launch on mainline Ethereum. It needs its own.
Right.
I forget what the sidechain they launched on is called, but it's they just needed something that was fast and cheap enough, which is why Avalanche as a primitive is a really enticing for game developers.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah, and but I think gaming and blockchain are both my hobbies. And as soon as you're talking blockchain gaming, I'm comparing it more with my gaming hobby than my blockchain hobby. And I do think one thing I want to see more is games that use blockchain to make it better, rather than blockchain and then thinking what kind of games can we build with this. Because I think being in games, a lot of the AAA games have been like overly monetized. There's too many microtransactions. There's too many like casino-like things, like constantly pulling your attention and get this loot box, get the best loot, whatever. Sure. Personally, I want to see less of that. I like my gaming experience simple, like little interruption as possible. And then I think
I totally agree. Yeah.
But there's even the intangibles that there's even intangibles that the blockchain brings to the video game development cycle. So you can imagine if they changed nothing about the game and kept it exactly as it is now, just being able to swap out the traditional payment rails with crypto payment rails would make the developers' lives a hell of a lot easier, right? So even without changing anything at all, just being able to ditch all of the old school crap and swap in crypto would be pretty sweet.
And I think there's some of that, but I think also it's just like, we need to, my personal thing that I think would do very well is taking the assets of video games, and instead of encoding them like into a game, taking the NFT model and having the assets be standalone, so that if you own a CryptoPunk, you can use that CryptoPunk in a game, like Rocket League or something like that. You could use your NFT as your flag on your car or something like that. And like seeing if you can take crypto assets that you own and all these NFTs that people are acquiring and using them to build out the metaverse basically of gaming, and starting to include these assets. And when you transfer them, they can move between games and have games generate NFTs themselves, and follow kind of the Borderlands gun loot strategy, and have really rare things that people can trade.
And so that's why I wonder about regulation though, right? Because what if you did that and my son did that and all of a sudden he owned a bunch of tokens and they were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars? How does that come into play?
I think regulation is one of those things that nobody has the complete
Yeah.
answer for it.
But you get what I'm saying, right? You like,
Yeah.
you're sort of like, damn, that opens up a whole can of worms. Like,
Suddenly your son gets like 3 years of tax. Here's $1 million, please. For games that don't sell anymore. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Connor, for the matter, like about like how to implement it in blockchain. And what I would like to see is more stuff like, if you put a bunch of time and effort in this game, you know, you get a good character, you get the good loot, you get the good skills, that you're able to monetize it to some way if you want to exit. It's like you're not locked into the system just because you put so much time into it. And I would indeed, I think, you know, you need to be careful with games, because games, you know, balance is a big part. You cannot just take a set of loot from one game, be super powerful immediately in the next game. I don't think that's a good gaming experience for myself, at least. Sure. I don't think I want to play a game where I'm immediately, you know, level 100, biggest, you know, badass in the game, and that's going to be my entire experience. Same thing with game economies. I think game economies are sensitive things, and it is good that people can earn, but they're, you know, it is a risk, because if you lose control of that as a developer, you know, your game may become unbalanced just as a result of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is where cosmetics are like really powerful, especially I think Fortnite does an incredible job of this. It's all about the culture of the look. It's not that there's any look that's, you know, better than another, except for the default look. Everybody, you know, if you have the default costume, I forget what the word is, people criticize you. You're a noob or whatever.
They call it default.
Exactly. So, you know, having it's, you know, there's so many different offshoots for things that are cool in that universe that you can kind of like build off of that, of just, you know, having a CryptoPump t-shirt, you know, would be something that would be like, you know, really neat, where you could customize the ecosystem in a way that you don't actually break the game versus, if you can just like, if you have your level 2000 gun from the prequel and then you bring it to the sequel, you know,
at least cosmetically, that would break
exactly. Yeah.
If you bring it cosmetically, like if you completed the campaign in the previous, you know, the prequel to this game, you can now have like special wings or whatever, like that kind of stuff. That's cool. And that's like you used the Fortnite example. To go back full circle for my journey, I always think of like the MapleStory Nexo shop, I think it was called. Like they had a bunch of cosmetic items. People wanted to trade like in-game currency, which, you know, was valuable because it wasn't that easy to collect, for like the premium items, which were only, you know, sellable for like real money or purchasable with real money. And there was just no way to trade it. And I think, you know, that's maybe more of a choice. I think you don't need blockchain for it, but you could use blockchain for it, and it could be very valuable, you know, for the user experience, I think.
Yeah, that's what I mean about the payment rails. So there's both sides of it, right? Like, so the NFT side, and then there's just using crypto as payments. All right, guys, it has been an hour, and I know we have a hard stop today because people have lives external to the Subnet show. So let's pass the mic around. Any last minute thoughts, CederNet? Want to give a shout out to anybody or anything?
Where can people follow you? Do you have a Patreon or anything like that?
I do not have a Patreon. You can follow me at YouTube, which is CederNet. You'll link that in the description, I hope.
My man, I will.
And then at Twitter, it's at CederNet with an extra S on it, because the at CederNet account has been claimed in 2013 and never tweeted, and I cannot get it.
Weak.
So follow me there. I think one shout out, you know, Avalanche community from the start. It's been very welcoming, and I hope that we maintain that. I think we do. I think we are open-minded. We are curious. We do challenge. You know, if you come with something that's not valuable, I think the community will not necessarily ape in. We're getting a bit apish at the moment. But I think stay curious, stay welcoming, and stay friendly, and be careful for, you know, bad actors.
Good call. Yeah, I agree 100%. Connor, yourself, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, this has been an awesome conversation. Yeah, please check out CederNet's videos. So many protocols, so many more videos than I was expecting when I looked at your channel. I was like, damn, this guy, I guess it's been like almost a year. Well, let's see, I don't know. Your first video was 8 months ago.
Yeah, 3/4 of a year. 3/4.
But man, like the serious output, you know, keep doing all the stuff you're doing, because you're doing fantastic. But if you're interested in keeping up with me, you can find me on Twitter at DAS_Connor, DAS_CONNOR. I did write a tweet about subnets last week, really in-depth thread going into what they are and, you know, how they'll be used. And so, yeah, I highly recommend you check that out. it was very well received. I was very happy with it.
Yeah, subnets are huge. Subnets are like why we consider Avalanche blockchain 3.0 technology. It really is a big leap forward. So I'm Gabriel Cardona. You can find me on Twitter at CG Cardona. Of course, I'll link everything below. Thank you so much if you made it through to this far. We will catch you next week on the Subnet show. And so as always, we're going to say from Snowflake to Avalanche and through consensus to the stars. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Cheers.